Hey, welcome back to the Fine Print. I'm Caleb Teskey, and we're back for the last chunk here with Julie Hulburd from the Vermont Cannabis Control Board. And we're going to try to rapid fire through some of the questions that you guys threw at me here for Julie. I got one guy who wants to know that what if a dispensary wants to move from one storefront to another? Do they have to reapply for their license, or can they just bring the license with them to a new place?
They can move, but there are some parameters around that. And I think that they're all in Rule 2. So hang on one second. You'd think, I mean, you should see my paper version of this. Looks like it's been through a war zone, but I go through it all the time.
I have so many notes.
Yeah. So I feel like that was it sort of towards the end of Rule 2. See if I can find it while I don't want to create dead space for you.
No, that's cool. Check this out. The next thing I'm going to ask you about is the 280E tax code, where retailers aren't going to be allowed to deduct their costs or something, which allegedly might raise their effective tax rate as high as 70%.
So what I'll say to the first question is, it's in Rule 2. I feel like it's towards the end of Rule 2.
Yeah, don't waste too much time. If it's in Rule 2, we'll find it.
And then your next question was about 280E. So that is true. That cannabis businesses can't take the same types of federal deductions.
I thought it was just retailers.
It might just be retailers. I will tell you this.
I stumped you a little.
I am not a tax accountant.
Me either, Julie. Believe me, I hate reading that shit. Okay, let's move right along. Did you watch that video I sent you? Yaim Plantias talking about.
Yep.
Okay.
I watched just that part, unfortunately,
cool.
But yeah.
No, that's fine. That's all I'm going to ask you about. He spoke on the social equity, and he said that this reminded him of affirmative action, and it made him feel awkward because he doesn't know if he's being hired for his skills or because he's like a token Hispanic guy. What would you say to Yaim?
Yeah, I'm glad that he brought that up because I worry about that. I worry about people thinking that. What I do want to say is that the benefit for social equity applicants is that some of the fees, not all of them, but some of the fees are waived or reduced. So that's a benefit. The other one is that we prioritize their application, but the application still has to all be there. There's no token gifting of anything. You still have to have filled out the complete application. You still have to have done all the thinking. You still have to have a business plan. So it's not like we are handing applications to people that we don't think are prepared and haven't completed the application process. That is a level playing field, but they're processed quicker because we know we need to repair those harms.
Very good. Tim Fair asked, what about social equity for the marginalized communities that were negatively impacted by prohibition but don't want anything to do with this industry? For example, my dad was arrested in the 91 in the biggest drug seizure ever. I told you about it. When I was 7, I watched him get dragged away by the feds on TV and did 2.5 years in jail. He got out, couldn't find a job, so he moved across the country, and that was pretty much the last we saw of him. So I believe that would put me firmly in the social equity category. I'm not interested in getting into this market. I like talking about it and learning about it. I'm not interested. But, they seized all his assets. We could have kept that. Maybe they could have left one Harley Davidson for Caleb or something, and I don't mean to sound selfish either.
No.
But I fit into the social equity category and I don't feel like there's any of that for people like me. I don't have enough money to get into any sector of this industry. I couldn't afford a tier 1 grow. I couldn't afford a retail shop, none of that.
So here's where we have not gone with social equity yet is the ancillary businesses, just like you're talking about. Somebody who wants to be a marketing person or is a tax accountant or what have you. Not everyone who is just like you're saying, not everyone who is impacted by cannabis prohibition wants to spend their life in the cannabis industry, right? So that is, I think, another step that we have to take is how do we encourage the businesses that open to then seek support, like they're supporting businesses from people who would also be social equity applicants. I think that's kind of the next step.
Do you think it's kind of a slap in the face that this whole the social equity appointee on the advisory committee was a cop? personally, I thought that was kind of, half the reason we need the social equity part of this bill is because of what the cops have done to people. And, cops are just following orders, which comes from the legislature. And so they've got to appoint everyone, including 2 cops on the advisory committee. Meanwhile, medical patients got no representation. And do you think that's kind of, I don't know, it felt condescending sort of to me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know how the folks that appointed the advisory committee, like, I don't know how that they got their lists of people. I don't know where they advertised or if they advertised for those roles. What I will say, though, is what we try to do is go beyond what the advisory committee offered in terms of the folks that provided some insight. And we had a number of social equity subcommittee meetings that were pretty well attended, I thought. And then we had a series of networking events in the evening that Kyle Pepper and I all shared the hosting of, where folks could come and we had a particular topic and, people asked questions. One of them was even about like how to work with your local municipal government. One was about setting up a business plan. So we tried to connect social equity applicants that way and offer, and actually, even though that was not necessarily intended for getting feedback, I certainly got feedback through that. So that was really helpful. And then we had a town hall that that the board intentionally did not attend, that it was just done by our consultants so people could speak really freely. And then they reported back to us. So, we were given an advisory committee, which was good, but we went beyond that. We tried to go beyond that and get more perspectives, because it's also unfair to expect one person to speak for all social equity applicants, or one person to speak for all people of color. Like, that's really that's a big ask, and it's an unfair request.
Yes, good point. Let's move it. What do we got here? My dude, you even said we're not testing for mycotoxins in Vermont. Is that true? I saw heavy metals. I saw pesticides. He said most other states test for mycotoxins. He said we do not.
So I got that here. So I feel like the testing part is the part where this is not my expertise. Okay. Social equity, who's better at that, James? Pepper, excuse me, Kyle.
Okay. Heard. Yeah. Let me ask you about this then. Gun rights. This is a question that's come up from a bunch of guys. They want to carry their guns in their dispensaries and in their grows. They also don't want anyone to know it because they're afraid that they would get in trouble, because it is still under the Controlled Substance Act, right? Because weed is federally illegal. If you have a gun and weed, it could be a federal felony. So these guys want to be able to carry. They don't want to have to hire a private security team to come in and protect their business. What are your thoughts on, I'm not a rabid 2A guy either, but like a lot of people have brought this up, and I'm hearing from a security company that they're not going to allow that. And I'm hearing that lawyers are saying that. And I think there's going to be some angry people if that happens. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter what I think, because it's not, that's because of the federal rules. Opinion, like, oh, do you?
I do. Yeah. I know there's some of these questions we're just kind of like thinking about it, but yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that as a concept in general. Like, I'm not, I know that it has happened in other states, and that's how people have felt like they needed to protect their businesses. I'm not sure. I feel like, and maybe this is looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, right? Like, I'm not sure that we're going to need it. So I'm not sure someone would need that in Vermont the way they felt like they needed it in California, right?
A gun?
Yeah, I don't. Well, see,
I disagree there.
I know it.
These guys carry every day, they know that shit. And to be fair, they do have they may have a lot of cash on hand. They may have a lot of product on hand. I personally think that they have a right to defend their own business as any other bit. I mean, I know the liquor store guys, they all got guns. So it's really just a question of the federal regulations, huh? Like,
well, for now it is. Yeah, I might stop short of, like, I didn't grow up around guns, so I don't, it doesn't mean the same thing to me that it does to other people.
Fair. Now, you said the DARE program was huge in your middle school.
Yeah, our local middle school does a huge.
What'd you say? Green Mountain Prevention Projects.
So Green Mountain Prevention Project is what existed when I was in high school, and that's what I was a part of. And what I was sharing with you is that it was a little bit different than DARE, and that it really wasn't just about substance use. It was about like building skills. Like if you have an uncomfortable conversation with a friend or you're not feeling safe, like here's the skills for dealing with that. I missed that program now that my kids are in high school. It went defunct, I think, somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s. But it's definitely lacking. Like, I don't know. So my kids didn't go to the local middle school. They went to a different middle school. So I don't know exactly what the DARE curriculum is anymore. But that Green Mountain Prevention Projects, I think, is missed right now for those skills.
What else we got? I know I got something. Oh, there was this big talk about the roadside safety. That I feel like really kind of held this up. They wanted to do saliva testing and all this stuff, and now they're hiring all these drug recognition experts for the cops. I'd like to just share a personal story for 2 seconds. I met one drug recognition expert, and like the one time I was not high in my life, he accused me of being high. I just worked a 14-hour wedding up at Burke Mountain, and I was leaving. It was like 2 a.m. And he accused me of being high, but then he didn't check me. I just told him I wasn't high, and then he let me go. I was like, okay, what are your thoughts on the roadside testing? I thought it was kind of overkill. It seems like a DUI test and another one size fits all law for something that kind of affects everyone differently.
So back in July, we had somebody come talk to us about like the A-RIDE and the DRE program. And what I liked about that program was at least my takeaway from it, right, for the 15 or 20 minutes or whatever it was that we had this person talk to us, was that it's more about like whether or not you are safe to drive. So even though you may not have been high, you may not have been safe to drive either after working a 14-hour wedding. So it seemed like that was the direction that program was going. Like, yes, it's about drug recognition, but it could also be about like, maybe you took NyQuil, maybe you, and you shouldn't be driving. Maybe you're too tired. Like there were
maybe I was too tired. And driving while you're tired, I think, is more dangerous than driving while you're high. I'm going to tell you something, Julie. We used to smoke weed every day before driver's ed. In between first period and second period, we'd walk down from the upper campus and walk down on the track and by the cemetery, and we would get high before driver's ed, and I drove fine. I got my license on the first try. I've never been in an accident. It feels like everyone else I know has, which is anecdotal. But do you think some of these driving claims, there's a study in Colorado they like to quote. They say after legalization happened, there was a big spike in car accidents, which is absolutely true. And I've heard Department of Health people stating that and putting it on pamphlets. And right under that in the study, it says, there's actually no causal link between legalization and the accident. There's no conclusive, it's a correlation,
Yeah.
And they've tried to make it out. Do you think there's still some of this fear kind of propaganda going on? I don't want to call it that, but like overblown fear.
Well, I think about cannabis in general and what can happen, perhaps. We definitely have the experience of other states to look at. In terms of driving, I think if we're going to deal with unsafe driving, we should deal with unsafe driving and all the things that are unsafe when someone's driving. It might be substance use. It might be being too tired. It might be not paying attention. Could be listening to the music too loud. Last time I got pulled over, I was listening to my music too loud. My friend and I were singing away and going too fast and having a great time. And we got pulled over and I got in big trouble. But that,
big trouble.
Well, no, I didn't really
get. Warning. Come on.
No, I got a ticket, but and it's not big trouble in like the scale of big trouble. It's not big trouble, but either way, that was not safe, right? I was going too fast and not paying attention. That if we're going to deal with that, we should deal with all of the root causes of unsafe driving and accidents. And I would say though, that meeting that I was just talking about in July, I feel like we saw some statistics at that point where they had isolated some cannabis specific accidents on Vermont roadways over a period of time, but it's not just cannabis. They had some cannabis specific numbers, but also alcohol. They also had
right. There's a lot of 2 drug crashes. I've seen those numbers. Yeah.
And
if you want to chat about those, I'd be happy. I like breaking down the state's numbers.
Yeah, go ahead and look at them. I
send them to me after this. I want to plow through a couple more of these. Are you concerned at all that the regulation and the fees and the taxes and the red tape and the hoops will discourage people from entering the regulated market?
I feel like we tried really hard to do as little, like regulate to like the base, like exactly what we needed to do and not much more, like to meet the expectations that the legislature set out for us. I hope not. That being said, I think that there are probably some folks who weren't anticipating, like I was talking about earlier, having to develop a business plan instead of a bank account. So some of those things may come as a surprise to those people. Hopefully, eventually they get there and are able to enter the market. But I'm hoping that we did just enough to have a healthy regulated market, but not so much that it's deterrent for people.
How is the state planning to regulate this industry, which has so many moving parts, with just such a limited staff?
So hopefully we will get more staff over time.
Is there a
And
plan for like how many you're going to get?
well, so right now I think we have 11 that we can hire total. And I think so we're well underway with some of those. I think we have maybe just enough to start. And then we'll have to see where it goes. Like we'll have to see, what's really necessary within the, like how much time does it really take someone to inspect? How much time does it, are there efficiencies we can find elsewhere? Are there things we can do remotely that don't take so much time? That will have to be built over time.
We just saw a merger of the two largest credit unions in Vermont, who are the only two banks taking cannabis accounts, who are now charging their members extra fees. I'm gonna not say anything. Does that mean anything to you? Does it seem weird timing? Does it seem kind of predatory?
No, well, the timing, no. I feel like the conversation about that merger, well, no, it did start after we started doing at least the part that I know about started about after we started our regulations. But no, I don't think that, well, I have no idea. I don't know their boards. I don't think they're related. I don't think
That's
it was
cool.
like
I want your opinion. I'll let you. Yeah.
I don't think that there was like this huge, I don't think there was a huge game plan to like corner the market on cannabis banking. I think though that bankers are not risk takers by nature. And I think most of the time we would be glad that bankers are not risk takers, right? So it makes sense to me that as they're, wading into the cannabis market, that they're doing it slowly and carefully. And what I feel like is probably happening with the fees is they're setting up some level of, we need whatever cost is going to come from this to be paid for by the users of the service, right? And banks have to know more about their cannabis businesses that they bank than really any other business. They have to know more about what's going on in the business. They have to know more about what's going on in the books than your average, corner store.
Well, you said, I want to just maybe call you out on that thing you said about bankers are not risk takers. I feel like maybe that, boy, they're getting involved in a business that's federally illegal. And I know it's all in Vermont, right? That's how they skirt the regulations, right? Because the VSCC, the credit union money stays in Vermont, right? Never leaves the state. So
it's because they're a state chartered bank. Yeah.
Right. So they're still taking a pretty big risk there. That's what they said in the newspaper. They wrote it up as the reason why we need all this money. We have to hire extra. Someone told me each account has to have its own suspicious activity reporter. So if you have 700 licensees, that's 700 extra staff they have to hire at these banks.
So I would hope that they would have more than one person assigned to, or one person assigned to more than one account. But yes, they do have to do all of the FinCEN regulations and all of the FinCEN guidelines. They have to do all of that. That is time consuming. I guess what I'm saying they're not risk takers is I'm saying that they are going to do all of the things that they're required to do to cross their T's and dot their I's to make sure that they don't, risk their other accounts or risk their bank in general. They're going to follow all the rules.
All right, we're going to keep zipping. Let me ask you this. We were talking about the definition of what is agriculture. So like what tier 1 outdoor, that's agriculture, right? They can get the exemptions under the Act 250 stuff and the zoning for the
only if they're already on a farm.
Okay. So let me ask you this. If you grew another plant indoors, like tomatoes, is that considered agriculture?
I think it is. I don't know, actually. That would be a Kyle question.
Okay, cool. Yeah, okay. Good. I like a couple stumpers.
I'm
a dumb question
I don't
earlier.
know.
I'm making up for it now. Let me ask you this. can a guy who owns a license, can a cannabis company owner also invest in another company? Because they're only allowed to own one license of each type, right? But someone asked me that, like if a business could own a license of a certain type and then be an investor of a separate company of the same type, and then he said, what's to stop them from just putting second, third, or more business of the same type in a family member's name and just having a deal with that family member, just giving them the majority of those profits not on the books?
Well, so I suppose if they did that, they would be trying to skirt the regulations because they do have to list their investors, right? And that is intentional so that people can't sort of subvert that one license rule by having a huge investment in multiple different licenses. So I suppose if someone was like just using a name and then, I don't know, it seems like a way of skirting the regulations that might be something that would come up in Rule 4.
It did seem like, that's exactly what he's trying to do.
Based on your description, I feel like I also should say I'm not a lawyer and nothing
Right.
that I say here today is intended
No,
to
and
be advice.
I had a feeling that some of these, look,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to some of
Yeah.
these questions either. Like, I'm not supposed to ask questions I don't know the answer to. I'm supposed to look sharp, but who else am I supposed to ask here? I figured we'll start with you guys.
We're building this as we go.
Yeah.
We're learning the answers as we go.
Now, are you going to be able to sell off a license like a medical dispensary? Can they sell off their license to? No.
No, you can't sell your license. You have to, if you change ownership, they have to reapply. So you could potentially, try to sell your brand or your business, but that new licensee is going to have to apply if the owner changes.
But are they going to get like first crack at that license, or are they going to go in the back of the queue and maybe someone else is anyone in Vermont even trying to get one of those integrated or medical licenses?
The only folks that can apply for the integrated licenses are the dispensaries. So, but in terms of like, has anyone asked to sell a license or change ownership? To the best of my knowledge, we're not there yet. We're still getting the initial licenses out the door.
Why don't we have a vertically integrated company in Vermont?
Do you mean like allowing? What do you mean by vertically integrated?
How did all of these all the medical dispensaries, right, got sold off, Slang and Iantis and Series. They're in Canada. Or Curaleaf, sorry, down there. They're all out-of-state companies. How did our medical licenses just get sold off to these out-of-state interests? And now I understand, if I read the legislation correctly, if you had the medical license, that means that you can get the integrated license as per the legislation.
That's right. So
which means all of the integrated licenses were already locked up before anyone else had a crack at them, right?
Yes, correct. So the idea, I think, and this is, I don't want to put words in the legislature's mouth, but it seems like it was a way to start the market and allow the businesses that were existing in it to continue to operate as they were operating, right? That would be my guess. I was not in those committee rooms, but that's what it seems like. So in terms of vertical integration, though, people can still, like, you can have one cultivation, one manufacturing, one retail license.
Yeah, well, Tim said it's actually cheaper to buy them separately.
It might be, yeah, I think it is actually, because the integrated license is $100,000. Well, the idea was that was the biggest license. They have the most responsibility. That was the way it was set, and the legislature set that fee structure. But yes, you can still, like, what I call stack your licenses and have like a vertically integrated business.
Do the medical dispensaries qualify for the 280 tax exemptions? I
don't know the answer to that.
If you could find out, that would be great.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep moving.
Okay.
Oh, we're cruising here. Boy, did I get to the end? No, I didn't. Maybe I did. I don't know. How do you package baked goods? That was one of the things I was going to ask, because I know that packaging, you're only supposed to have 50 milligrams, 5 milligrams per dose. And I know some people that are making baked goods. How do you package that and get it on the shelf stable somewhat?
Yeah, well, you can package it in a package, right? You can have a container of some kind that's child resistant. But are you talking about, how do you outline like the doses?
Well, I haven't seen any child resistant tamper proof packaging for like a cupcake or, something like that.
Oh, so I've seen a chocolate
Have you?
bar that was incredibly difficult to open. It required scissors, as it should. It was child resistant. That was the point. But that also meant I had to go get the scissors. But like but it was, I have seen, I did see a company in Maine that had a chocolate bar that you couldn't tear it. I
Huh.
could not tear it.
I've had some concentrates like that where the top, it's like child resistant. It's like, dude, I have arthritis. I can't get that.
Yeah.
Also, I've heard multiple stories about quality control issues from some of these medical dispensaries, moldy weed, powder mildew, other things that I'll leave out. Those things I've confirmed without a doubt from just a ton of people. I've also heard someone ask, are the dispensaries going to be required to do independent testing? Because it seemed like before they were just sending it back and forth to each other and sort of cross-testing it.
So yes, the S-188 clarified that. So the testing has to be independent now. They could test for someone else. They have to send their product out for testing.
Okay. Boy, how you haven't approved any lab licenses yet, huh?
We did approve
via
lab license on Monday. Yeah.
via diagnostics. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Yeah, I saw those guys. All right. Boy, so here we're gonna get into like, what I'm gonna ask you at the end. I always ask the same question at the end about what would you change in the legislation, but let me just rip through here. Did Shane Lynn invite you guys down to the dispensary there at the CBD?
I went and toured the Milton facility.
In Milton?
Yeah.
He invited you there. Did he invite everybody?
He invited all of the board members. Yep. I've toured several facilities. So not just CBD, but like other places in Vermont that are, working on their licenses. And then I've toured a couple places in Maine.
When was this that you went over to Milton? Do you remember?
So,
Ballpark?
It was very early on.
Okay.
Very early on. It was a long time ago.
Whoa. What's a long time for you, Julie?
A whole year.
Oh, a year? Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it was within the first, I want to say it was within the first couple of weeks.
Now, I've heard that they use some strange chemicals to remediate this weed when it gets moldy. They dip it. I've heard some of them are like a peroxide solution. Myox, I think, is the brand name that's used to treat. How do you feel about a medical dispensary growing moldy weed and rather than just scrapping it, treating it with something and then putting it back and selling it to maybe a cancer patient?
Yeah, I don't know. I think even in our rules now, we've allowed people to remediate their product to a certain degree. I think, what probably matters the most is how it tests in the end. And maybe there are some things that I don't know enough about in terms of like, what does that mean when you remediate it? What happens to the product? And there may not be enough research on that at this point. Who knows? I don't know if there's enough research on that right now.
Okay. Let me ask you about this. What about putting a dispensary? I know that there's zoning rules for schools, 500 feet, right?
Yeah.
What about colleges?
So it doesn't include colleges. It doesn't. So the rule that we wrote ties to already existing law that just talks about, I think it's K through 12 schools and properties owned by a school. So like if there's a ball field behind the school or a community building next to the school that's owned by the school.
But you got to admit, there's probably a lot of kids who are underage at a college, at least in terms of the smoking age. Does that set up a situation where a guy might get himself in trouble or someone might accuse him of trying to, I don't know. It seems weird that what are we calling a kid? Like we can't have it next to a middle school, but next to a college, it's fine. That seems odd to me.
Well, the part about the schools it was in law before the Cannabis Control Board existed.
Oh, that was in the legislation.
Already there.
Okay.
It was there before Act 164. It's been there for a long time. It's already there. So we're just following that. And as it relates to a college, you have to check ID twice at the door and when you sell. So, theoretically, someone will have checked the ID twice. They will have, gone through the training that the Cannabis Control Board is going to provide. They will know what an ID looks like. We have, I audited the liquor and lottery training for that. And it's a really good training about like how you determine what's a real ID and what's not. And so with that in place, it seems like if you're checking ID, it should resolve the issue of selling to someone who's underage. Now, I think colleges have their own rules about whether or not you can have cannabis on campus and whether or not you can have it in the dorms. And that, that's up to the college to work on. Yeah.
Interesting. That's going on the back burner there. Let's see, I got a couple more there. Are you concerned at all that we might see a repeat of the hemp crash a few years back where everybody tried to get into the market? I actually said the saving grace, people complaining about the delays. I actually said, this might be the saving grace that it takes a minute to ramp up and we won't see that. But I like to look at things from different perspectives. What do you think about that?
I don't think so. I think that with hemp, you could grow it anywhere. You didn't have to have security for it, right? Like there's all these requirements around cannabis that don't exist around hemp. So we've tried to make it as straightforward as possible to get into, but not so easy that it's everyone's paying $25 for a license and growing hundreds of plants with no supply chain. The other piece is that with hemp, I think the Department of Ag only really regulated the growing of it, right? And the manufacturing of it and the selling of it. Like they don't regulate CBD retailers. We are looking at the entire supply chain. So as we do this, we keep going back to that. I don't know if you saw the meeting with the big supply and demand spreadsheet. It's on our website.
I've missed the last couple. Oh, I've seen the projections.
This is way back. Yeah, this is way back. If you like playing with numbers and spreadsheets, this is like everybody's favorite tool, but like it's the supply and demand model.
I've been all through that.
Yeah, as we continue to roll out, I keep going back to that supply and demand model. Okay, like how many manufacturers do we think we're going to need? What do we need to do to prepare the market for that? How many retailers? All of that kind of stuff. I was glad to see how many towns opted in at the last town meeting day. I was really nervous about that at first, that there weren't very many, but this town meeting day, there are lots more. And I was glad to see that.
Someone asked me about maybe a cap on retail dispensaries. They're concerned that maybe if you put too many retail dispensaries in a small town or something like that, it would just create a competition where nobody makes any money. Are you concerned about that at all?
I feel like the market will manage those things, right? If you're about to open a retail license and I feel like people are talking to each other in this industry. And so if you're talking to your, cohorts in this industry and 6 of you say you're going to open in one town, you might go, oh, okay, I think I'm going to go to this other town. Like, I think people are going to figure that out. Everyone I've met in the cannabis industry is smart enough to figure out how the market works and what they need to do to find their niche and what they need to do to build their brand. And they know it's not like lining up on a strip mall. They already know that. They're smart enough to know that.
Most of them. No, it's, I thought the stereotype of the lazy stoner has really been put to bed since I've been out here. Boy, these guys are up at the ass crack of dawn. Like, yep, I work about, 36 hours a day, and then I talk to my kids for 12 seconds, and then it's like back to work. Boy, it's impressive the amount of work these guys put in.
And for some people, it's a side gig. So they're working their 40-hour job and then coming home and then doing this, right? Like that's an impressive amount of work.
Oh, here we go. Is there any chance that the October deadline for sales will get pushed back because of the delays?
I think that the delay that we had in the initial licensing will get absorbed over time. So I don't right now anticipate that we'll have a delay like that in October, but I will say, we're dealing with timelines, we're dealing with application processes. We've got a certain number of people doing this. We're all, working as fast as we can. So
yeah,
I don't think so.
It's a lot,
but
you're doing a good job, Julie.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Look, we got 5 minutes. Let me crack a couple more at you. Let's say a retailer or a wholesaler has a product recalled. What is the penalty for that?
So it's in Rule 4. I
Okay,
don't
cool.
remember off the
No,
top of
just
my head,
reference
but
it.
yeah,
got it.
Rule 4 is the one that talks about compliance and enforcement.
Okay,
It's all
cool.
there.
Are labs liable for inaccurate results? If they gave a bad test to a dispensary and they sell that to someone and they get sick from smoking some mold, is a lab going to be liable for that?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I know the answer to that
Okay,
now.
I don't either.
That might get worked out.
That
in
was
the
from
future.
Yarim. Good question, Yarim.
Yeah, that is a good question.
All right, here we go. 4 minutes. So if you could rewrite the legislation, what would you get rid of or change? Or the question.
Yeah, all the
Final
things that we
thoughts, please.
recommended.
Yeah.
You know, we spent a lot of time building recommendations last year, and you know, some of them were taken up and some of them weren't. But yeah, I would, and I feel like you know, once, and I hate to talk about waiting because I know everybody's been waiting already for a long time, but you know, I feel like now we need to start focusing on the medical program. Like we had all of this rush to do the adult use program. I feel like the medical program has never gotten the attention that it needs. And so now when we move to this, I hope when we move into the next session that the recommendations that we made, we can work a little bit more on.
Cool. You know, this has been, I'm going to take a couple minutes here and just thank you. This has been fascinating. I'm going to call it there. I really appreciate you dropping in here. I know you're busy and I'm kind of all over the place. So, boy, this has really been fantastic. And I hope we could follow up. I know that was a little scattershot, but I got some more stuff in there. And, boy, I'm sure you're going to be busy here the next few months, but this has been fantastic. And I'd really like to follow up on some of those ones where you said, well, I'll get you that later.
Yeah,
but
I wrote them all down.
Yeah, I appreciate your openness, man. It's not often that you can find, some state agencies are not forthcoming with answers to questions.
Yeah.
And, it's nice. And I'm trying hard here because I know people are going to they're counting on me to not fuck this up, and I take that kind of seriously. I still get high a little bit, but what do you got for books in the background? You got 2 minutes. Tell me what books you got back there.
I got all kinds of books back here. I like Brene Brown, Adam Grant, that may seem kind of lame, but those are leadership books. I got all kinds of stuff. And the Band Played On, Stitching a Revolution, Color of Law. I'm a reader.
What's behind you? Is that encyclopedias?
No, these are the books that were my favorite to read. This is going to make me sound like a super huge nerd.
Great,
but like
great
these
ending.
were my
Yes.
books that were my favorite to read when I was little. Like these were my mom's books, but they're like a treasury of speeches, a treasury of philosophy. This is the dork I am, and Shakespeare. These I taught myself to read a little bit with the speeches one.
Wow, what a nerd reading Shakespeare. On that note, I think I'm out of here. Julie, for real, this has been fantastic. I'm so glad that you took the time out of your schedule to be here. And good luck. I would never want your job. It looks fucking exhausting.
Well, thank you. We don't get to do the fun part of this industry often, but this was fun.
Hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care, Julie.